Joshua 3:14 says, "So when the people set out from their tents to cross the Jordan, with the priests carrying the ark of the covenant before the people, and when those who carried the ark came into the Jordan, and the feet of the priests carrying the ark were dipped in the edge of the water, for the Jordan overflows its banks all the days of the harvest. The waters which were flowing down from above stood and rose up in one heap, a great distance away at Adam, the city that is beside Zarethan. And those which were flowing down toward the sea of the Arabah, the Salt Sea or the Dead Sea, were completely cut off. So the people crossed opposite Jericho." Joshua, the leaders, and the Israelites have started with the spiritual and consecrated themselves to God, and they are now ready to move toward the promised land. But now they face another obstacle, a flood. There's a flood between them and the promise. They are so close to reaching what God has prepared for them, but there's a river 16 feet at flood waters in front of them. See, this wasn't the first time that a body of water stood between God's people and them moving forward into His promises. Just over 40 years before, Moses led this same nation of people out of Egyptian bondage. And with Pharaoh and his army pursuing them, their march was halted when they came to the Red Sea. God instructed Moses at that time to stretch his rod out over the sea. And then God sent a wind and drove the sea back, and the Israelites crossed on dry ground. As powerful as that was, that would not be the case this time. You see, God didn't tell Joshua and the Israelites as they're standing at the Jordan, God didn't tell them, "Wait here until I dry up the water, and then you can cross over. Then you can step forward." No. He told them, "Take a step into the water, then I'll dry up the water." The waters weren't going to part, and progress wasn't going to be made until somebody took a step. Too often, we stand right here on the shore, waiting for God to dry up the flood of our challenges, our inconveniences, our struggles. We wait on God to dry up the waters that are standing in front of us, and then we'll take a step toward Him. Then we'll take a step toward His plans and purposes for our life. God, you dry up everything that's in front of me, and then I'll take a step towards spiritual growth. Friend, just like the children of Israel, the move of God you want to see is on the other side of the step of faith you need to take. You're waiting on God to move, and then you'll take a step. But God is saying to you right here, right now, you take a step, and then I'll move. In James chapter 4, verse 8, he said, "Come close to God, and I'll come close to you." James also tells us that faith without works is dead. In other words, if we want to move into the promises God has for us, we've got to take a step into the water rather than waiting for the water to move, and then we take a step. As long as those people stood on the banks and stood on the shore studying the flood and how high it was and how long it had been there, as long as they stood on the shore, they were living cut off from the promises of God. And I think that's where many of us have been. That for the better part of a year, we've been living cut off. We've been living cut off from all that God has for us. We've been living cut off from peace, cut off from joy, cut off from hope, cut off from family, cut off from life. It's time for you to take a step. It's time for you to take a step into the waters and watch God move in your life. Let me ask you right now, friend, what step do you need to take? What step can you take? And moving into God's plans and purposes for your life. It's time to leave the shore behind. Walk away from confusion and doubt and stagnation and mediocrity and step forward. Yes, you're stepping into uncertainty. Yes, you're stepping into the unknown. But that's where God meets you. That's where God moves. Take a step and watch God move in your life. So let me ask you again. What's the step that you need to take? It might be more helpful for you to think about and define what's the flood that's in front of you. What's the overflowing situation, the overflowing circumstances, problems, struggles, and frustrations that seem to be standing between you and God's promises for your life, for your family? Maybe the flood in front of you is something in your marriage. Maybe it's something in your health. Maybe it's financial. Maybe the flood that's in front of you is that over the last several months you've really grown cold in your walk with God. Whatever your flood is, whatever the overflowing, overwhelming situation is, there is a step that you can take right now that is specific to your flood. There's a step of faith, a step of trusting God, a step of action that you can take into that circumstance that invites the power of God to move on your behalf. And so I want to allow you some space right here for the Holy Spirit to speak to you and for clarity to rise up in your heart, for you to be specific. What's the step that I need to take today? Not what's the next 10 things, not even the next 3 things. Not what are you going to do in June, not what's going to happen at Easter, but right here today. What's the step of faith you need to take to invite God to move in your situation? If you have a financial flood, perhaps the step you need to take is to be part of our free financial coaching that's coming up on January 30th. If you have a flood that's telling you that you're disconnected from God, maybe the step that you need to take, in fact, I would guarantee the step you need to take is to get connected into a Connect group in the next couple weeks. Maybe the step that you need to take is a step toward trusting God and obeying Him in becoming a tither and inviting God into your finances. Maybe the step you need to take is sowing forgiveness. Maybe it's becoming a part of the next couple weeks of 21 days of prayer and giving God 45 minutes or an hour of your day fasting. I don't know what it is, but I do believe that right now, God the Holy Spirit is speaking to you about the step that you need to take, because He's telling you, He's confirming to you that when you step into the water, God is going to move and things are going to begin to dry up in front of you and you'll step into God's promises. I'm believing that for you. I'm encouraging you. So here's what I ask you right now. Whatever your step is, comment right there. You click the link. Go ahead and register. Go ahead and get committed. Go ahead and be a part. Take that step right now. Don't take the step 4 days from now. Take the step right now. And trust that God will meet you there. I can't wait to hear in the days and weeks and months to come how God met you and dried up the waters, even though they were at flood stage, when you took a step. Where do we go from here? We start with the spiritual, and then we take a step. I love you. Until next time.